hospital mortuary can't cope with the dead bodies. Many are lined up outside waiting.
In India, the death toll from the gas tragedy of Bhopal in the central state of Madhya Pradesh continues to rise relentlessly.
1,600 people died a gruesome death when gas leaked from the pesticide manufacturing plant of Union Carbide. Some people were in such torture they'd begged to have their eyes removed.
It was more than just a tragedy, it was disaster.
It was the first time that I witnessed such a ghastly tragedy, all happening in front of my eyes.
It was just after midnight on December the 3rd, 1984, in Bhopal, India. A cloud of poisonous gas hovered over the sleeping city. Methyl isocyanate, or MIC, was leaking from the Union Carbide factory, an American-owned pesticides plant. The city was about to become the site of the world's worst industrial disaster.
Some of the victims I saw, their eyes had just popped out. They were swollen like anything. They were red, watering eyes, frothing mouth. Some people were dying in their own body fluid.
Thousands of men, women and children were killed that night, and the lives of thousands more were ruined forever.
Here was a group of people who was moving away from their own home in an injured state, without knowing where they were going, without knowing what had hit them. They just didn't know.
Initially, Union Carbide said the leak wasn't their fault.
We believe that this occurred because of a deliberate act of a disgruntled employee. It was not an act of negligence.
But no proof of that claim was ever given. More than 2 decades later, survivors still face constant sickness, and it's not uncommon for new babies to be born with defects linked to the leak. And then there's the dying. After effects are still taking their toll at a rate of 1 a day. Meanwhile, the fight for rehabilitation, accountability and compensation goes on.
The survivors never gave up. They are not giving up even today. And their demands for a life of dignity and justice continue to remain uppermost in their minds.
I had just barely come home, and it must have been about 11ish. It was cold and wintry night that day. I get this message from the control room coming in, trying to tell me that something had gone wrong at the carbide. Could have been around 12, maybe a little after 12. And I just asked him, what do you know about, what is this? He said, sir, it is said, the officer on duty in that region has said that there is some kind of gas leak which is taking place in the vicinity of the carbide. And therefore he's alerted everybody.
Most of the city was sound asleep. No one could imagine the real nightmare that was about to begin.
Suddenly, we got up. I started having a very severe pain in my eyes. They were all burning, itching. There was all watery discharge from the eyes. I thought that, you see, the gas, the LPG cylinder must have leaked. I got up and I asked my wife just to open all the windows so that the gas, if there is a leakage, would pass off. But then she was not able to get up. She was also having the same problems. She was coughing incessantly. And my son, who was sleeping close by, he was really in agony. He was coughing, crying.
The Union Carbide factory was located in the densely populated center of Bhopal. The plant had been making pesticides for years without problems, but on that night, something went horribly wrong. A faulty valve allowed water to enter the MIC storage tank. That caused an explosion and the release of a lethal gas cocktail into the Bhopal night air. Those affected worst were those living closest. the slum dwellers.
My name is Hazra B. I live close to the Union Carbide plant. The house must be around 40 to 50 feet away. That night, we slept at around 11 p.m. I started coughing so much, there was water in my eyes and it started burning. Then my husband went out and saw that people were running out of their houses and that gas was leaking out of Union Carbide. I had no idea before that there was so much poison being made in Union Carbide.
It was clear something bad was happening, but no one knew exactly what it was.
You see, this control room was all full of this gas. The entire area was full of the gas. And by that time, I was vomiting very, very acutely. And there comes an officer from the Carbide, who was an ex-army personnel, Major Mehra. He came and met me, and he just came to tell me that the leak has stopped. So I just asked him, Major, can you tell me what was the leak? He said, I don't know. And I said, can you tell me what is the effect it will have? He said, I don't know. Then I told him, okay, please give me what is the antidote? What do I tell the doctors? How do we help the suffering population? He said, I don't know.
Whatever the cause, whatever the cure, the immediate result was chaos and death as MIC gas spread across the city. Heavier than air, it hugged the ground, trapping all in its wake.
As I was running, I was almost choking. My eyes and nose were dripping. As I reached the crossing, I felt my son's head slump on my shoulder as he became unconscious. I was very afraid, but I didn't uncover his face.
It was a horrible thing, people running. Again, that was a mob which was leaving the city. Here and there, it was very difficult to describe that hysteria. See, people, they all wanted to get out of the city. Practically, they were using all the vehicles, and somewhere on the bonnet of the top of the vehicles, the cars, auto rickshaws, and somewhere literally running.
With death at their doorsteps, their homes becoming gas chambers, many fled to the streets.
I saw a young mother in her night clothes being pushed with the crowd, being carried along with the crowd, but desperately trying to hold on to a young baby. I could see that the mother was kind of losing the baby from her hands. But after that, she probably went with the crowd. And I went to the affected areas, went to the hospital, came back. And it pains my heart no end when I think that I had to pick up the dead body of that child, crushed. That was the first body I picked up.
And there would be more, many more, as the gas tore through their bodies, killing people slowly and painfully. Lalit Shastri was one of the first journalists on the story. Within hours, he was at the hospital.
What I saw was the whole place was crowded. The corridors were full of victims lying everywhere. They were on the streets. They were inside the hospital building. Streams of victims were rushing in, coming in, for whatever means they were being brought in. And it was a horrendous sight to watch. And it was more than just a tragedy, it was disaster.
Shamsad Begum was also at the hospital that night. She'd brought her 3 children there, desperate for help. One would not live through the night.
The doctors in the hospital were not taking good care. The doctors there also ran away when they came to know that it was MIC gas. Some were forced to stay, but even they didn't know what to do in the case of MIC gas. They were just giving injections and putting in glucose drips.
By noon of the day after, the terrible scope of what had happened was beginning to set in. The dead numbered in the thousands, and officials were overwhelmed.
And then it became a problem as to how do you manage so many dead bodies, because you see there is a legal process. Any unnatural death has to be dealt with in a particular way. Not only that, to add to that was the problem of disposal of the bodies. Human bodies plus animals. So that was another major crisis which we underwent after 2 days.
Official figures say around 3,000 people died in the immediate aftermath of the leak. Bhopal residents believe the real total was much higher. They said at least 7,000 shrouds were needed to cover the dead. But the devastation did not end with the dead of the first few hours. In fact, the real horror of that night was only just beginning.